Friends, so we're going to do a review of this deck, which you know because you clicked on the thing. I posted this on Instagram, so if you're watching this and you saw that there, I'm going to do a walkthrough. And it's going to be relatively quick. There's not a lot to say about this deck. This is the latest offering from Hay House. I remember commenting on Instagram yesterday or the day before, oh, it's interesting how Hay House is kind of giving all these decks, or not giving, but publishing all these decks that are sort of far more representational than any other mainstream publisher. And a couple folks had some pretty smart ideas as to why. That said, whatever their reasoning is, and I don't think, in capitalism there's much altruism when it comes to publishing anyway, so I you like to see it, you know what I mean, for sure. What I said ultimately was like the reason that I wanted to look at this deck is because it is a mass market deck. I'm always looking for mass market decks when people say, "Hey, what's a good starter deck?" or "What deck should I give to my kid or my friend, who wants to get into it?" If it's your first deck, I don't recommend going the like super expensive indie road. Certainly you can, you know what I mean. But also, I occasionally teach intro or foundational tarot classes based on Waite Smith, and I'm also like, what deck do I recommend there? And I've recommended the True Heart in the past, but I might also recommend this one going forward. And however we feel about the publisher, they've given us a handful of, these are just two of the tarots. So the Lightseers, to me, weirdly, is sort of a deck that I don't use much because when everything happened around the indie version of this and the infamous card, I just sort of, I don't know, by the time I got it, I was like, it's kind of skunked in a way. It's not the deck, it's just, the way things happen. That said, this, this is the Hay House version, and it's got really bad cardstock, but the original indie version was also kind of too much cardstock-wise, in a completely different way. It's pretty good. This deck actually reads really well for me when I do use it. It could be more representational. It's very thin, very young, but it's pretty good in some ways. I edged it in this color that didn't come that way. The original indie deck did have a coloring like that, and then the Fifth Spirit Tarot I think is one of the best decks on the market today. It's sort of everything, and more. I also had the indie version of this, but wanted to do a comparison of that. And so I have a video of the comparison between the two. Really the big change is the titles and a few adjustments on this one. I actually use this version more because I can see the titles on the minors more quickly. But it's brilliant. Whatever their reasoning, I can't, mass market publishing, the Tarot Industrial Complex, right? Big Oracle. But on the bright side, here's another deck that is pretty representational and I think more successful than the Lightseers. Not that I don't like that deck in terms of representation. So it's the Unfolding Path Tarot by Athena Noctua. It has the same cardstock as the Fifth Spirit. So same stitch in that regards. A little too thick, but not bad actually. This particular one, I don't know if you can see. You might see on the side more. It's almost like the way there's this natural split you can see, and it's like I don't know if it's weird. It's just it's almost like the cardstock's a slightly different color, but it's the same cardstock. This back is beautiful. I mean, that's really gorgeous. I think the artwork is exceptionally beautiful. It's got a watercolory pen and ink vibe, which is just really beautiful. There are some cards I really dislike in this deck, just as as a represent or an interpretation. They're not my favorite. This is not my favorite Fool. So we're starting off, but there's a lot of stuff to like in here. There's nothing, I kind of like a little foolishness in the Fool, right? Because it's not all sort of sunshine and balloons and butterflies, the Fool. That said, I think the deck is largely fairly neutral. So, though I don't like this particular Fool, it's fine. I will say that there's a lot of sort of non-binary appearing folks. and folks of various ages and maturities, and in that regard, I think again really really successful. Again, not my favorite Empress card, but it's, again, like there's art wise, there's nothing wrong with it. I love this Emperor. I mean, he's sort of, I think this might be one of my favorite Emperors ever. Hierophant. The Hierophant is becoming sort of in tarot more of a spiritual guide than the sort of oppressive papal figure, which is interesting and both useful and not, because I always say, like, I need the Pope in the reading or in the deck because we're still being impacted by that kind of, religious colonialism. But there are times when the card does represent sort of faith or someone who embodies faith or represents it. So, a more neutral Hierophant, I think, is quite nice. So here's the Lovers. Someone asked if it was Adam and Eve. It's not giving Adam and Eve in this particular case. It's actually quite a sexy card. So there are times where this deck reminds me of the Robin Wood, which was a deck that I loved for a little while. It just, it was like even before we were talking about representation, like that deck is like uber white. It's like the whitest deck. But sometimes the art here reminds me of that, and sometimes it reminds me of the Lightseers, actually. Not in any bad way. This is a beautiful strength card. Like I said, it's a very neutral deck in a lot of ways. This is becoming more and more a thing with the Wheel of Fortune, where it becomes sort of about something to me that doesn't, like, yoga isn't quite giving Wheel of Fortune to me. I don't get that. That doesn't make sense. But again, I'm used to modern tarot doing things that don't quite make sense to me. Justice, Hanged. I think that's a lovely death card and just, a winner. Temperance. The Devil. I don't mind this Devil. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Which is fine because, again, neutral. I can't get over how beautiful these backs are. I mean, these might be the most beautiful backs of any tarot deck I've ever seen. This very much feels like Lightseers to me, but very, very cool. Like the star, this moon is beautiful. The sun is beautiful. I went and looked at the little book to sort of understand this, and the artist doesn't really describe their choices in the little white book or the little book. So this seems sort of like a non-judgmental judgment card in a way, but again, it's it's lovely artistically. And then here's the world. And so the minors, to me, are where the mostly in the suit of cups are the cards that I don't love. And I'll point them out to you, and you'll probably even guess before I say anything. But the wands in this deck, because of the crystals sort of fastened in, does remind me of Robin Wood. And it's beautiful. This is a modern deck that manages to not super center on kind of things that become dated quickly, like cell phones and fax machines. It's sort of modern, but not specific to this moment, which I kind of appreciate. I love watercolors. This might be digital watercolor, I don't know, but whatever, it looks gorgeous, and I love a watercolor deck. I also love that, the wheelchair card. Like, this is becoming an archetype in tarot now, too, is the wheelchair card, which is usually the Chariot. Luckily, we get kind of the victory card here, which is, I think, is a nicer interpretation. But again, we're getting to a point in tarot where it's like, okay, we're being representational, so we have to have the wheelchair card. And like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing that there's like a wheelchair card, but like, how else, do we indicate physical or visible disabilities, right? Is there any other way? Again, not an artist, and it's very easy for me to be judgmental, but okay, I hate this Ten of Wands. It's so specifically modern, and it's not giving Ten of Wands to me, so this might be my least favorite card in the deck. So it's Page, Knight, Queen, and King, but the gender presentation of each of those differs, as does the age, which I think is really nice. So that was the Page. Here we have the Knight, the Queen, and the King. And so now we get into cups. And so here's the ace. I don't know why we always have to have a dove, but we do. So I don't love this card. Again, a little too specifically of a meaning, right? But it's fine. That's pretty. This is pretty typical. I don't love this card because it's giving me like magazine in a way that I don't love. I really don't like this card. Don't know why. It's just a little, I don't know. It's a little something for me. I think the focus should not be on the person, maybe, and on the cups. Maybe that's the thing in this particular card. This is a little too specific for me, but it's fine. This is the other one I really don't like. Again, it just is, I don't know, it's like giving me 90s Gap ad. So, courts page, knight, queen, and king, and then swords. I'll just go quickly through. This feels very Robin Hood to me. I don't love this t-shirt situation, but I do like that it's sort of not the usual thing. So we'll allow it. That's very pretty. And I love the sky, the inky sky. I love this one. This is a card that never really does it for me, but I love this guy. He kind of reminds me of, on the first season of The Umbrella Academy, this sort of brooding, angry, hot brother. That's who this reminds me of. And I'm here for it because, though I did not finish watching that show, I did like the angry, brooding, hot brother. This is not my favorite court card. It's fine. She's kind of badass. Sort of giving... What's that movie with Sharon Stone? The Pentacles suit is lovely. I mean, Pentacles in a way, artistically is almost always my favorite suit. I love the bees here. I love this guy. I think we see him again later. This is really interesting and I don't know, fun card to interpret, I think. Yeah, not my fave here. Oh, it's not. So, very similar dress, but I love the two and then 9, the suits are just en fuego. I love this. You rarely see a male presenting figure on this card, and I don't know, it's kind of a nice change. I love this. This might be one of my favorite cards in the deck. See, the thing in this deck, too, with the 10 of Cups and the 10 of Pentacles, is they show more or less the same thing. So, that's another thing. Even in Rider-Waite-Smith, I think you kind of get the same vibe from each. So, yeah, it's pretty. Page, knight, queen, and king. So let's zoom out, and I will shuffle it for you. Whoops. Yoink. All right. I can probably zoom out more than that. I'm gonna need more room. Look at my messy space. OMG. So though this cardstock is thicker than I think is necessary for cardstock, I actually don't have an issue shuffling it. If it were any thicker, I would. And it does require a little bit of, it's a little bit of a workout. But I'm used to this one because I do use the Fifth Spirit so much. I'll say that if you riffle, it does tend to bend the deck even if you bridge, which is a little bit harder, not impossible. I don't care, you know what I mean? I like if my decks look used. especially because I have so many. It's nice to like give the illusion that I have some consistency. Uh, but it does shuffle nicely and it overhands beautifully. I'm still in love with the backs of these cards. Like, florals are not usually florals for spring, groundbreaking. If you know, you know. But beautiful, and it's just the color palette and the whole vibe. So it shuffles nice. I mean, this is a deck, so, you know, in terms of review, I've sort of talked about what I like, what I don't like. About the individual cards, I mean, I would absolutely bring this to an event as sort of a general deck. Usually when I do an event, I'll do like a Pip deck and a Wade Smith deck. I enjoy reading with the Pip decks more. I feel like people are somewhat becoming familiar with them. But I think people kind of expect something that resembles tarot, and I think most people understand tarot as the Wade Smith. I really, you know, I would not be, you know, sort of shy about reading with this. I think it's lovely. I think it's Wade Smithy. I think it's, you know, I mean, I've done many layouts of this over the past few days that you don't see a white face the whole time. So the balance in terms of people of global majority, I think is effective. And so while I can't say, boy, gee, yay, Hay House, because I don't trust anything, I can say yay to this deck. And I do think that by purchasing decks that have this level of representation, it's a signal to the moneymakers that there's a market for these things, and publishers keep saying that there isn't. You know what I mean? And so while I don't advocate over consuming, I do think that if you want to demonstrate, certainly money speaks louder than Instagram posts, for example. So, you know, if signaling to the publishers that we want to see all kinds of bodies and people and representation, genders and expressions and the like, then, you know, buying the stuff that does that and not the stuff that doesn't, which, hey, look, I'm guilty about buying whatever I feel like, right? But I do try to, you know, pay extra attention to things that are actually representative of what we've been asking for and sort of demanding. So, I guess this is my way of justifying the fact of like showcasing a mass market in this situation. I know nothing about the origin of this deck. It does seem like Hay House is getting most of their decks lately from successful Kickstarters or other, you know, indie methods. So they're kind of doing market research in that way. But you know, I don't know. Can't speak to that, but I can say that this, I think, is a very successful deck. Even with the cards that I'm not wild about it, I would absolutely and probably will read with this for clients. And from a production standpoint, cardstock's a little thick, but I can shuffle it, and I have small hands, and I'm getting achy. The guidebook is fine. It's a little guidebook. I don't think you're going to find anything revolutionary in there, but I think it's successful. I think it's good, and I recommend it. And next time I do a foundational tarot class, this may be the deck that I recommend that we work with. When I do foundational classes, I usually say, hey, we're going to all work with this one deck, so we're all on the same page. For most of my other classes, it's do whatever you want. So anyway, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Take care, be good, and we'll talk soon.